So welcome to our Museums for All informational webinar. My name is Ashley Jones, and on behalf of the Institute of Museum and Library Services, I'm pleased to welcome you to this webinar about one of our national initiatives, the Museums for All program. So there are 3 speakers during today's session. In addition to myself, we'll be hearing from Brendan Cartwright, who is the program manager at the Association of Children's Museums, and he's the coordinator for this special initiative. And for a participating museum perspective, we will also hear from Eliza Kozlowski, who is the Senior Director of Marketing and Engagement at the George Eastman Museum. To set the stage for the more detailed information we'll be going over about the program, I'd first like to present some general introductory information. So what is Museums for All? Museums for All is a cooperative venture with the Association of Children's Museums, which has a goal of expanding access to the nation's museums by offering free or reduced admission for EBT or electronic benefit transfer cardholders. And over the past seven and a half years of this initiative, which started in 2014, IMLS has been working closely with ACM to recruit museums as program participants. One of the strengths of this nationally branded program is name recognition, meaning that the member museums are united in an effort to provide increased access to those who might not otherwise be able to visit their sites. And another strength is that the access provided by this program is not limited to certain days or specific times. Museums for All participants are dedicated to providing access to everyone during their normal operating hours every day of the week. And we began the program with a pilot for the children's museum community, but since then participation has been opened up to all museums around the country, and we are happy by how much the program has grown and flourished, but we think there's always room for more museums to participate, and that's why we're happy that you all have joined us today. So I'm going to hand it over now to Brendan, who will present the initiative's guidelines.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. The goal of Museums for All is to be easy for all museums to adopt and potentially to adapt. We have a set of broad minimum guidelines that make it easy, that make it an easy to use program, sort of ready out of the box. Those guidelines include offering a general admission rate of no more than $3 per person for up to 4 people when one individual displays a SNAP EBT card from any state. This is an easy way to identify a visitor who qualifies as having a financial need in a minimally intrusive way. Museums have the freedom to decide what their admission price will be. It can free, $1, $2, etc. And you're only obligated to offer that price for a basic general admission. If there are add-on attractions at your exhibits, you are not obligated to include them in your Museums for All offering. The Museums for All rate would be offered during all normal operating hours. And as I mentioned, museums can adapt their offerings as well. They can include WIC or Medicaid or other forms of identification that they accept for Museums for All. They can include discounts on special exhibits or events. And some museums choose to offer a discounted membership. And we've seen massive success for this program so far. In the 7.5 years that it's been going, over 900 museums have begun participating, almost 950 at this point. This includes museums in all 50 states, in the District of Columbia, and even the US Virgin Islands. Ashley mentioned we piloted the program in children's museums, but now every type of museum is represented. We have history museums, art museums, zoos, aquariums, multiple presidential libraries, and so on. There are museums in cities, they're in rural areas, there are large museums and small. And This is a slide. It was a little more dynamic when there were not 50 states, but this is a visual representation of where museums are participating in Museums for All everywhere. In case you're wondering how your particular region is doing, here's the breakdown there. New England looks like it's lagging a little bit, but there are over 30 sites that are counted under the single banner of historic New England. So it's a little more even than that. Many states are doing well, but California, Ohio, Florida, and Pennsylvania have the most participants. And New York has been growing very rapidly as well. As I mentioned, the Museums for All program was piloted in children's museums, which is one reason we see the large number of children's museums that participate. But we've seen quite a lot of enthusiasm in history museums and art museums as well. Some of these museums are free admission anyway, but choose to participate to really drive home their commitment to extending the invitation to every member of their community to visit. As you can see, there's been steady growth over time. With our latest round of reporting, we're at over 4 million visitors that have used the Museums for All program to visit a museum. And the visitor numbers took a bump last year due to shutdowns and diminished capacities, but people still used the program. And a similar program to Museums for All is Blue Star Museums, which gives free admission to military members and their families during the summer. There are around 2,000 museums that participate in that, and Museums for All, which runs year-round and is aimed at helping families with financial need, is close to 50% of that total. So we're pretty excited for that. One phenomenon that we've begun tracking are hub cities, or cities that have 3 or more museums that participate in Museums for All. As you can see, there are many big cities on here that you might expect, like New York, Houston, and Chicago. But there are also places like Greenville, South Carolina, Missoula, Montana, and Springfield, Illinois. In a hub city, museums, and I should mention too, it didn't happen in time to make the slide, but Rochester, New York, with Eliza is from, just made the list as well. So in a hub city, museums can work together to really strengthen their Museums for All offerings. And they can also recruit other museums to join, or at least demonstrate the benefits of joining. We've seen that in places like Richmond, San Antonio, Pueblo, and Grand Rapids, where people have really kind of reached out to their neighbor museums to get everyone on board. And we'll talk more about hub cities later, and we'll maybe hear a little bit about recruitment as well. So registering for Museums for All is very easy. We have a dedicated website, which you can see the URL there, www.museumsforall.org with the number 4. And there's a button to register there. The actual process should take less than 5 minutes, and it's free to do. We provide support materials like access to branded collateral, a group site, virtual hangouts, webinars like these, and more. We'll also send you a window cling to use at your site, and there's a searchable map where all the participating museums are listed. Some of the other resources that we provide include previous webinars that have been archived, infographics that you can use on your social media, press release templates, examples of every state EBT card, since each state has a different one, and this program is open to holders from any state. And we do have some staff training recommendations as well. We periodically create and add more resources, so don't be shy in telling us what you'd like to have. And we've created some resources specifically for those hub cities that I mentioned as well. Some tailored sample press releases and template agendas and slide decks for holding meetings as a collective. So now that you've seen some of the background of Museums for All and gotten an idea of who's participating and what kind of support is offered, Ashley is going to let you know why participating in the program can be valuable to your museum.
Thank you, Brendan. I'm going to talk with you a bit more about the value of participating in Museums for All. So Brendan has told you all about the guidelines and who is participating in the initiative. And now you're probably wondering, well, why should my museum join Museums for All? And there are so many reasons to participate, but most importantly, it affirms that museums are meant for all members of their community, and that the participating museums are committed to equitably expanding their community outreach. And what's great is that this effort typically fits easily within museums' missions, vision, and their inclusion plans. Also, Museums for All is yet another way to increase community access to your research, your collections, your programs, and your exhibitions, as it reduces barriers. And additionally, as Brendan was noting, we make it as easy for you as possible by providing free, customizable collateral, such as press release templates and branding opportunities to make it even more successful. Another benefit we are observing is the power of participation among multiple museums in a single city. Forming these hubs is allowing museums to market the program jointly, and thereby offering a menu of rich opportunities for families in their cities. They work together to build new partnerships with social service organizations and other community-based organizations. And this also helps them to have a louder and more unified voice when approaching municipal leadership or local funders for support. So we'd like to share a couple of comments here we've received from participating museums that we think show the value of this program for their visitors. They can be vulnerable community members who really just want to experience something normal and fun. They may have taken a risk just coming to the museum, not knowing if they could afford to visit. We also see that people can experience a change in their life, either going on to food assistance due to hard luck or getting off of it due to better fortune. But in any circumstance, we think that these visitors will remember that the museum was there for them when they needed it most. But much better than reading quotes from participants, we have a real museum participant with us today. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to Eliza Koslowski of the George Eastman Museum to talk about their experience.
Great, Ashley, thank you so much. And thank you to both you and Brendan for inviting me to be able to share our Museums for All story. It was great seeing, being in Boston with a great panel at the AAM at the American Alliance Museums conference, and just being reminded of what great work other museums are doing as part of this. So it really lit another fire under me. So the timing was great, being able to pull some information together for this. So a little bit about George Eastman Museum first. We are located in Rochester, New York, and we were founded in 1949, and we're a unique institution in that we're not only the National Historic Landmark Mansion and Gardens of George Eastman, who was the founder of popular photography, we're also a museum of photography and cinema. So we have our mansion that's restored to look as it did when George Eastman lived here, and beautiful lush gardens, as well as our galleries for our photography exhibitions, and then a 500-seat theater where we show films not only from our collection, but other films that we borrow from distributors and that sort of thing. And Ashley, I couldn't remember because I think you're able to advance, so I didn't know, you and Brendan did it so seamlessly, I didn't know whether I'm supposed to say like next slide or whatever.
That works for me, Eliza.
Okay, so yeah, so if you want to go to the next slide. Sorry about that. So here you see just a little bit, so from the standpoint of photography, cinema, mansion and gardens, so much to see here. And if you want to go to the next slide, we are primarily a tourist attraction. About 65% of our visitors are from outside of Rochester, and so we see them really high attendance rates during the tourism season. So beginning in May, Rochester has a huge lilac festival, which really signals the beginning of tourism season, and then through September, even into October a bit as a shoulder season because of all the leaf peepers that come to New York State. So we do see a lot of people from outside of Rochester, and what we've within what we offer, you know, our photography exhibitions appeal to a lot of photography enthusiasts. Our film programs in our theater appeal to a lot of film lovers, and so our challenge has always been over the years, what can we do to really appeal to the broadest local audience, and what can we do to bring people back who embrace the history of George Eastman and the mansion and the gardens. And so there's 3 events that we do throughout the year. Our busiest time of the year has now become the holidays, when we do gingerbread displays as part of our Sweet Creations exhibition. And we see a huge number of people that then come to visit during that time. We've now been doing it for about 27 years. And then Dutch Connection is in February, when we have tulip. And I'm sorry, I realized I should have thrown photos of these because we could all use a little bit of gingerbread and tulips right now. But the tulips, just beautiful. It's a tradition that George Eastman had, where he brought back tulips from a trip to Amsterdam. And so he used to force them in the mansion. So we now, for 3 weeks in February, have thousands of tulips blooming. And so again, that brings in a lot of local community. And then right now we have Eastman Entertains. This is our 6th year, where we do these tablescapes throughout the mansion and in other parts of the museum, celebrating George Eastman's love of entertaining. And so it's called Eastman Entertains at the Movies, and community members and businesses take themes from various movies and they interpret them in these tablescapes. So those are the 3 times of year where we do start to see more local people coming in. And so, however, even though we've been seeing these, the larger attendance during these times, we still were not seeing really the broadest audience possible. And we recognize that admission rate is a factor. It's not, the tourists are not, for the most part, are not price sensitive. And so, but we do see that in order to bring in, if they're not members who come in for free, what can we do to bring in that broadest audience? So Ashley, if you want to go to the next slide. It was interesting to hear the timing, because I guess I had forgotten exactly, like, the idea of Museums for All being a pilot first and then launching in 2014, because we announced, so somebody from our development team had been at a Blackbaud conference, if people know of Blackbaud, and came back and shared, and maybe they were learning about the pilot that was being done at children's museums, because they came back sharing that some museums were offering free admission to SNAP EBT cardholders. So that's what got us thinking about it. And what you see here is the press release where we announced in 2013, the end of 2013, that we were going to admit SNAP card holders for free. And what we decided to make it free admission in the spirit of Eastman. So George Eastman was really known for giving back to the community. And we felt that this was a great way for us to give back to the community and open the doors for the broadest community possible. So if you want to go to the next slide. And so we actually announced it in 2013. There's a fundraising campaign every year around in December called Rock the Day, where various nonprofits choose a program that they want to highlight as a way of that. It's on Giving Tuesday. And so we chose our SNAP EBT cardholder campaign to be the opportunity to announce it and to try to raise money to help support bringing this program to life. And so then we introduced it as of January 2014, all SNAP EBT cardholders and their families, and there's no limit to how many people want to come in. We're invited to come and be able to start visiting the museum. And if you want to go to the next slide. Let's see, so then as far as our level of engagement, and when I look at these numbers, particularly starting out, I think we were not aware, other than the initial announcement of it, and then trying to really identify the resources to be able to promote. We were not, it frustrated us that we weren't seeing higher numbers and weren't really able to put that attention toward the program, though we received great reviews from people that did come, that there was great appreciation for people that did come. But you'll see we started to build some momentum and started to get some higher numbers. And then interestingly, and Brendan and I have had this conversation, I thought we were part of Museums for All. So when I had heard of it, we had talked to somebody on my team, I thought we were registered. So really, it seems like we came to it late in the game, but that's because we thought we were already part of it. So in November of 2020, and I don't have our 2020 numbers here just because of the time period we were closed because of COVID, and we've all sort of decided to forget 2020. Though I'm sure if I can pull those numbers, I'm sure we saw more people that were sadly needed that extra assistance and probably welcomed then. So I'm glad that we were able to be there for those people who needed to rely on some assistance to be able to come to the museum. And so we officially joined in November of 2020, and then we're full on as far as 2021. And so, as I said, we've seen the steady increase. We've had very positive feedback, but the challenge really was figuring out what is the best way to promote. Some of the things we did do is we have a rack card that promotes the program. There's something in our community where police officers, along with someone from neighborhood programs, go door to door just to meet neighbors in targeted areas and hand out leaflets of things happening. And so we had at no charge, it was just the cost of printing the rack cards, we were able to provide those to be distributed to those neighborhoods. We had some various library programs we were doing that were family programs, and we would bring the rack cards to that. We also have a really very robust public market that's 3 days a week, and there's radio spots that can be announced as part of the public market, and so they were willing to do those radio spots for us for free. So those are just some of the things initially that we did to help get the word out. And then if you want to go to the next slide, Ashley. And there's definitely some other outreach that we did, and I'm glad that I've learned about this certainly from hearing from other participants of Museums for All, and then also what Brendan had mentioned, the Blue Star program. We are actually in our Dryden Theater where we show films, we are also admitting the cardholder and family to the films. We've had less of a push for that, and also I feel as though if we did more family films and matinees, that would probably be something that would be more of appeal, but that's not a program that we have right now in the theater. So while we do allow, it's more of a passive program, but at least we do promote, and we do certainly get some people who take advantage to come see our films. We also didn't anticipate what a great boost this would be for our relationships with Rochester City Schools and bringing in some school groups where when we share with them that we are free to SNAP and EBT card holders, that benefits a lot of the students that end up coming from the city schools. Also, some of our social services programs, when we're bringing some adult groups from the various social service programs, we're able to admit them for free. And then Brendan mentioned Blue Star. We've participated in Blue Star for several years, and from the beginning, rather than just participating during the summer, we participate all year long. So we admit active military and their families for free all year long, it is a perfect blend with Museums for All. And I love that anytime I've participated in one of these webinars or also at the conference in Boston, I hear from other Museums for All participants about similar programs that they're doing to expand on the SNAP EBT and Blue Star. So I look forward to hearing more about those. And then we've also for a number of years had what's called a VIP pass through our local libraries where people can check out a pass. It's a BOGO, so it's a buy one, get one. It's not completely free, but it is still at least a discount. Somebody can check it out, bring that card and use it as a buy one, get one, and then return it back to the library. And that's been growing as far as the number of libraries that have participated in that. And then we have our Rochester Area Community Foundation, which is a very important fundraising or organization that helps return funds to the community. They've been eager to hear more about how we can all build on what we're doing for SNAP EBT and our VIP passes. So pre-COVID, they had connected with Rochester Institute of Technology class to get the students to start to think about how could we make an online program that would make it easier for people to, and this was interesting because I think it was called, Culture Card or Card for Culture, Brendan, that in Boston, I think was that in Boston?
Yeah, in Massachusetts, it's Card to Culture program.
Yeah, and so that's similar to what we're talking about in Rochester, because we have, as I'm sure I've seen others give feedback that sometimes people are reluctant to show their SNAP EBT card. We've not seen it to be too much of a barrier, but we do hear from some people. And so in Rochester, we've been looking into what program could we do so that there's a direct connection with our Monroe County office or state office, so that someone can go online, and if they are a SNAP EBT, they can automatically print out something that will admit them not only to museums, but performing arts organizations, either at a discount or for free. So that's something that we're continuing to explore. And then if you want to go to the next slide, Ashley. So that sort of leads into next steps. And as Brendan shared, we are now, I'm so excited, a Hub City as of this month. We, along with the Rochester Museum and Science Center, and then most recently the Seneca Park Zoo, they are both offering discounted admission, but it's now the three of us. And our art gallery is potentially also, because they are offering some SNAP benefits. So we hope to be able to have them join. And we will be, but as a Hub City, I'm really looking forward to exploring what more we can do together. I think there's certainly strength in numbers, and we already saw a bit of a boost when the zoo announced that they're part of the county, and the county executive announced that he was going to be seeking legislation for that to pass, for the zoo to be able to do a discount. So the more we can get the word out among the three of us, I think it'll be, we'll certainly all benefit. And then we are in the position, it's been quite a number of years since we've increased our pricing, both for the museum and the Dryden Theater. And I think this is a great opportunity to just reinforce SNAP EBT as an offer, that while our prices are going up, we still, with this and other programs, we want to remain affordable as we can to families. I mentioned Rochester Area Community Foundation. I guess it's something I'm excited about, so we'll see what happens with that as we get back to it. And then, interestingly, my other next step I put was I'm reminded anytime again, and it's been our friends in Boston who talk about the Office of Transitional Assistance, and I'm sure you're all the same, where you may be on a webinar and you make a note of something you're going to do, and then you get on to other things and you don't do it. So then you hear about it again. You're like, okay, yeah, I need to do this. So writing it in my next steps, I thought, I'm going to do this even before this webinar. So I reached out and I found that New York State has the Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance, and and then there is the county connection as well. So I'm getting a little bit further, and now with my Hub City colleagues, we can, as a group, reach out both locally through the county, but also through the state to see what we can do to raise awareness of our participation in the program. And then just, Brendan also mentioned New York State is growing. My goal is to get New York State to be the top participating. I have the privilege of serving on the Museum Association of New York board, and want to see further who is participating, who's not, how can we get more New York State museums participating, and then promote it via New York State tourism. Make sure that I Love New York knows, because the other thing that I learned, or I guess it hadn't occurred to me, that a SNAP EBT card, whether it's from Kansas or New York State, we're still going to accept it. And so whatever we can do for any people that are coming into our community, coming into our state, to be aware that this is a benefit for them as a card holder. And then lastly, really looking forward to continuing to leverage the resources from Museums for All, that again, at that conference, and what Brendan's just shared here as well, a reminder that there's a great toolkit on the website, and there's resources that are available to us to use to continue to promote our involvement and just get the word out as broad as possible. And then I think the final slide is just, I'm happy to connect with anybody who's thinking about being part of the program if they have any other questions, or anybody who just wants to brainstorm ideas for how we can market in our own communities. I think that idea of sort of all of us together working to help each other and sharing each other's ideas is just going to benefit the program across the whole country. So thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing everybody's questions and ideas and continuing the conversation. Thanks.
All right, yeah, thank you, Eliza. That was great. I really enjoyed hearing all about what you're doing at the George Eastman Museum, and it's also nice to hear that the stuff that we're doing is being made use of in such great ways. So and Eliza touched on this as well, and we had mentioned it a little bit earlier, but as you know, the museums have been affected very greatly by COVID-19. even now, some museums are still operating at reduced capacity. But in something of a surprise, we still saw about 8 museums a month continue to register for Museums for All during the height of the pandemic, and even if the museums were closed at the time. And we've since the beginning, we've increased the number of participating museums by over 400. It's been almost half of our total number of museums have come in the last couple of years. So it proves the continuing necessity of the program's mission. Unfortunately, it has been the case that some of the museums that were participating in Museums for All have had to close permanently, but I think there was just one exception. Every other museum has kept their commitment to offering Museums for All rates to its visitors. So if the museum stayed open, they kept Museums for All. And I think that one that stopped offering it then came back and later started offering it again. So, we also saw that a couple museums compensated for their reduced capacities by offering their Museums for All rates to every visitor. It's not something that we're expecting you to do, but it's a nice thing. They already had the program in their bag. So, and there have been some operational changes that have been made during the pandemic. So to ensure reduced capacities, most museums were requiring guests to buy their tickets online or at least to pre-register. A lot of them are still doing that. So it's a bit of a challenge to Museums for All visitors who merely had to show their SNAP EBT cards at the admission desks before. So, when you're building out these new admission systems, it's very important to keep in mind how your museum is still going to accommodate Museums for All visitors. Are you going to have an option at that ticket price on the menu? Will folks have to present their SNAP EBT card in person when they show up? Will you just direct Museums for All visitors to buy their tickets in person? There's no right answer on this, but whatever your museum chooses, it should be explicit and easy to follow on your website so that folks know how to get their tickets. And when you're allotting the tickets by time, make sure that there are enough for Museums for All visitors. On average, about 3% of a museum's attendance is coming from Museums for All visitors. That does vary a little bit by type of museum. It can be a bit higher for children's museums, a little bit lower for art museums, and so on. One other thing that museums have done during the pandemic, while they've been closed or unable to welcome as many guests as they'd like, is to really increase their community outreach. And whether that's offering virtual museum tours and activities or distributing STEM kits to schools, the museums are embracing their roles as community pillars and making active overtures toward their communities. And at its core, that's what Museums for All is all about. Extending an active invitation to everyone and making sure that they know that the museum is for them and that the museum wants them there. So museums recognize that access and inclusivity are important bedrock organizational values, and Museums for All is one way to help with those DEAI efforts. An organization's commitment to inclusivity usually extends beyond just Museums for All. And in fact, Museums for All works best when it's part of a suite of offerings. So many museums offer reduced admission for seniors, children, perhaps educators or military. Many will offer some sort of monthly free day or even have memberships that can be checked out of the library, similar to what Eliza mentioned. All of those are wonderful, and Museums for All supplements them rather than taking the place of any of them. And well, the only requirement to participate in Museums for All is to accept SNAP EBT cards. Several participants also accept WIC. Some also accept Medicaid. The Madison Children's Museum, for instance, has 21 different identifications that it will accept for their $1 admission fee. So we set kind of a base, and you're welcome to build on top of that to whatever works best for your institution and your community. About 10% of the participating museums also offer some sort of reduced membership program as well. So they're taking that next step of getting people in the door on daily admissions and then turning them into members with more solid museum going habits. Some of them are also using the opportunity to catch visitors that Museums for All might be letting fall through the cracks. At the Omaha Children's Museum, they're expanding their reduced membership to include families that qualified for reduced school lunch rather than just the free school lunch that it had been. And there are families that might just exceed the threshold of qualifying for food assistance, but still could find visiting a museum to be cost prohibitive. So these museums are stepping up and supplementing Museums for All in other ways to try and catch as many of those families as possible. I'll also just share real quickly that there was a group that does mentoring in Santa Barbara, California, that just reached out. They found out about the program and wanted to know if their mentors could bring their mentees, who were usually, children that came from households that were part of, that were SNAP recipients, but the children didn't have the cards and the mentors didn't have the cards. So that is one of those little things that might have fallen through the crack, but I was able to connect that person with the museum directors of Santa Barbara County, who had formed a Hub City, and they are working now together to get that group into their museums using the Museums for All rate as well. So it's a nice little story that we had recently. Anyway, next slide, please. So yes, one part of joining Museums for All is broadening your visitor base, but another part is taking the time to work on assumptions and biases that exist within your own staff. One participating museum that was located in a college town was surprised to see how many grad students were using Museums for All to visit. They hadn't expected that many to be on food assistance. And there are some wonderful resources around diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion on the AAM website. And the Cultural Competence Learning Institute, or CCLI, is another fantastic way of museums looking to improve their own approaches to inclusivity. One complaint that does come up is why people on SNAP assistance deserve this admission discount, or rather, why can't someone not on food assistance get the same rate? So, for our purposes, the cutoff had to exist somewhere, and we felt that a government issued card would work well and be the least intrusive way to demonstrate the need for those, for some help in removing a financial barrier. But one of the reasons that we think that Museums for All works best as a suite of options is so that those who don't have the SNAP EBTs, some kind of appropriate price can be found for them. And turn things back over to Ashley.
All right, thanks, Brendan. So sometimes museums or their boards can be wary of joining Museums for All. They might see that it calls for very deep admission discounts in some cases and worry that it would be a hit to their budget. So we took a look to see if that would be the case. In 2018, we engaged Aurora Consulting to do an evaluation of Museums for All and the experiences that the participating museums were having with the program. And the complete results of this evaluation are available now at this URL here on the slide, which is on the IMLS website, as well as on the Museums for All website. And we'd like to share some pertinent findings with you. So the evaluation found that only one of the museums that responded reported a decline in their revenue since implementing the program. Most reported no change, but over a third of the respondents actually said they saw increases in ticket sales and attendance, and 25% saw increases in development revenue, in membership, and program sales. Museums for All is a great opportunity, we think, to add new development streams, either by soliciting funding that directly pays for the program or finding grants and sponsorships that will help. It's a great program that helps the entire community, and there are often foundations or banks or other funders that want to be a part of it. And this is encouraged. But perhaps most importantly, we can see that there's no overall deficit to being a part of Museums for All, and oftentimes we've heard it can be a revenue generator. And one of the other things that we try to do regularly with our participants in Museums for All is connect them with other museums in their city or area that also participate in the program. We found that museums, as Eliza has told us already, museums can do really great things in a collaborative effort to promote this program within their community. And as I've mentioned earlier, we started calling cities with 3 or more participants hub cities. As we were kind of noting this phenomenon, we decided to host a convening. This was in late 2018. We invited representatives from 7 of these hub cities. This included San Diego, Chicago, Akron, Missoula, Chattanooga, Worcester, and Grand Rapids. We invited them to attend a convening so we could determine how museums can work together to get the most out of Museums for All. And at that convening, we found that several opportunities for cooperation exist, and not just between museums. They can use Museums for All as an entry point to establish or deepen their connections with local food banks or transit authorities in ways that can overcome other barriers that potential museum visitors face in making it to a museum. These actions can help build trust within the organizations of a community, but also with the people. And it shows that the museums are serious about their commitment to having everyone visit. The invitation that is being extended is real and genuine, and the museums are willing to put in the work on their end to make it happen. There are spaces for everyone, truly. And the complete report, if you'd like to review it, the complete report is available on the Museums for All website. And we wanted to note just some additional activities we've done more recently. Last year, we convened a group of hub cities again in a series of listening sessions. These cities included Richmond, Cincinnati, Providence, Tulsa, San Antonio, and San Diego. We wanted to learn from them how we could better support them. And based off of these listening sessions, we created some new resources specifically for hub cities. And these include a special press release template, a flyer for distributing around the community, a one-pager to give to local SNAP offices, as well as sample meeting agendas for recruiting other museums or potential funders. And we also created a slide deck for them to use in those meetings. And these resources are available for all museums in hub cities to use. So if all of this sounds intriguing to you, we want to remind you that it's very easy and free to register for Museums for All at the website, which is museumsforall.org, and that is with the number 4. And in closing, we certainly hope that the information shared today has interested you in becoming part of the Museums for All participant family. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact any of us. We've listed here on this slide our names and email addresses for Brendan, Eliza, and myself. And we are more than happy to answer any questions you have about the program. You can also contact the general mailbox for Museums for All, which is info@museumsforall.org. Again, that's with the number 4. And we also encourage you to connect with all the latest Museums for All news on Twitter, which is a fairly active Twitter account, I have to say. The handle is @museumsforall. So we look forward to hearing you, and we thank you very, very much for joining us today.